Part I of American Cookery by Amelia Simmons. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush in Marquette, Michigan, July, 2010. American Cookery, or the Art of Dressing Viands, Fish, Poultry and Vegetables, and the best modes of making pastes, puffs, pies, tarts, puddings, custards and preserves, and all kinds of cakes, from the imperial plum to plain cake, adapted to this country and all grades of life. By Amelia Simmons, an American orphan. Published according to Act of Congress, Hartford, printed by Hudson and Goodwin, for the author, 1796. Preface. As this treatise is calculated for the improvement of the rising generation of females in America, the lady of fashion and fortune will not be displeased, if many hints are suggested for the more general and universal knowledge of those females in this country, who, by the loss of their parents, or other unfortunate circumstances, are reduced to the necessity of going into families in the line of domestics, or taking refuge with their friends or relations, and doing those things which are really essential to the perfecting them as good wives and useful members of society. The orphan, though left to the care of virtuous guardians, will find it essentially necessary to have an opinion and determination of her own. The world, and the fashion thereof, is so variable, that old people cannot accommodate themselves to the various changes and fashions which daily occur. They will adhere to the fashion of their day, and will not surrender their attachments to the good old way, while the young and the gay bend and conform readily to the taste of the times, and fancy of the hour. By having an opinion and determination, I would not be understood to mean an obstinate perseverance in trifles, which borders on obstinacy, by no means, but only an adherence to those rules and maxims which have flood the test of ages, and will forever establish the female character, a virtuous character, although they conform to the ruling taste of the age in cookery, dress, language, manners, etc. It must ever remain a check upon the poor solitary orphan, that while those females who have parents, or brothers, or riches, to defend their indiscretions, that the orphan must depend solely upon character. How immensely important, therefore, that every action, every word, every thought, be regulated by the strictest purity, and that every movement meet the approbation of the good and wise. The candor of the American ladies is solicitously entreated by the authoress, as she is circumscribed in her knowledge, this being an original work in this country. Should any future editions appear, she hopes to render it more valuable. Directions for Catering, or the procuring the best viands, fish, etc. How to choose flesh. Beef. The large stall-fed ox beef is the best. It has a coarse open grain, and oily smoothness. Dent it with your finger and it will immediately rise again. If old, it will be rough and spongy, and the dent remain. Cow beef is less boned, and generally more tender and juicy than the ox in America, which is used to labor. Of almost every species of animals, birds and fishes, the female is the tenderest, the richest flavored, and among poultry the soonest fattened. Mutton, grass fed, is good 2 or 3 years old. Lamb, if under 6 months, is rich, and no danger of imposition. It may be known by its size, in distinguishing either. Veal is soon lost. Great care, therefore, is necessary in purchasing. Veal brought to market in panniers or in carriages, is to be preferred to that brought in bags and flouncing on a sweaty horse. Pork is known by its size, and whether properly fattened, by its appearance. To make the best bacon. To each ham put 1 ounce saltpetre, 1 pint bay salt, 1 pint molasses, shake together 6 or 8 weeks, or when a large quantity is together. Baste them with the liquor every day. When taken out to dry, smoke 3 weeks with cobs or malt fumes. To every ham may be added a cheek. If you stow away a barrel and not alter the composition, some add a shoulder. For transportation or exportation, double the period of smoking. Fish, how to choose the best in market. Salmon, the noblest and richest fish taken in fresh water, the largest are the best. They are unlike almost every other fish, are ameliorated by being 3 or 4 days out of water, if kept from heat and the moon, which has much more injurious effect than the sun. In all great fish markets, great fishmongers strictly examine the gills. If the bright redness is exchanged for a low brown, they are stale; but when live fish are brought flouncing into market, you have only to elect the kind most agreeable to your palate and the season. Shad, contrary to the generally received opinion, are not so much richer flavored, as they are harder when first taken out of the water. Opinions vary respecting them. I have tasted shad 30 or 40 miles from the place where caught, and really conceived that they had a richness of flavor which did not appertain to those taken fresh and cooked immediately, and have proved both at the same table, and the truth may rest here, that a shad 36 or 48 hours out of water, may not cook so hard and solid, and be esteemed so elegant, yet give a higher relished flavor to the taste. Every species generally of salt water fish are best fresh from the water, though the Hannah Hill, black fish, lobster, oyster, flounder, bass, cod, haddock, and eel, with many others, may be transported by land many miles, find a good market, and retain a good relish; but as generally live ones are bought first, deceits are used to give them a freshness of appearance, such as peppering the gills, wetting the fins and tails, and even painting the gills, or wetting with animal blood. Experience and attention will dictate the choice of the best. Fresh gills, full bright eyes, moist fins and tails, are denotements of their being fresh caught. If they are soft, it's certain they are stale, but if deceits are used, their smell must approve or denounce them, and be your safest guide. Of all fresh water fish, there are none that require, or so well afford haste in cookery, as the salmon trout. They are best when caught under a fall or cataract, from what philosophical circumstance is yet unsettled, yet true it is, that at the foot of a fall the waters are much colder than at the head. Trout choose those waters; if taken from them and hurried into dress, they are genuinely good, and take rank in point of superiority of flavor of most other fish. Perch and roach are noble pan fish. The deeper the water from whence taken, the finer are their flavors. If taken from shallow water, with muddy bottoms, they are impregnated therewith, and are unsavory. Eels, though taken from muddy bottoms, are best to jump in the pan. Most white or soft fish are best bloated, which is done by salting and peppering, and drying in the sun and in a chimney. After 30 or 40 hours drying, are best broiled, and moistened with butter, etc. Poultry, how to choose. Having before stated that the female in almost every instance is preferable to the male, and peculiarly so in the peacock, which though beautifully plumaged, is tough, hard, stringy, and untasted, and even indelicious, while the peahen is exactly otherwise, and the queen of all birds. So also in a degree, turkey. Hen turkey is higher and richer flavored, easier fattened, and plumper. They are no odds in market. Dunghill fowls are, from their frequent use, a tolerable proof of the former birds. Chickens, of either kind, are good, and the yellow legged the best, and their taste the sweetest. Capons, if young, are good, are known by short spurs and smooth legs. All birds are known, whether fresh killed or stale, by a tight vent in the former, and a loose open vent if old or stale. Their smell denotes their goodness. Speckled rough legs denote age, while smooth legs and combs prove them young. A goose, if young, the bill will be yellow, and will have but few hairs, the bones will crack easily, but if old the contrary, the bill will be red, and the pads still redder, the joints stiff and difficultly disjointed, if young otherwise. Choose one not very fleshy on the breast, but fat in the rump. Ducks are similar to geese. Wild ducks have redder pads, and smaller than the tame ones, otherwise are like the goose or tame duck, or to be chosen by the same rules. Woodcocks ought to be thick, fat, and flesh firm, the nose dry, and throat clear. Snipes, if young and fat, have full veins under the wing, and are small in the veins, otherwise like the woodcock. Partridges, if young, will have black bills, yellowish legs; if old, the legs look bluish; if old or stale, it may be perceived by smelling at their mouths. Pigeons, young, have light red legs, and the flesh of a colour, and prick easily; old have red legs, blackish in parts, more hairs, plumper and loose vents; so also of grey or green plover, blade birds, thrash, lark, and wild fowl in general. Hares are white flesh'd and flexible when new, and fresh killed; if stale, their flesh will have a blackish hue, like old pigeons, and if the cleft in their lip spread much, is wide and ragged, she is old, the contrary when young. Leveret is like the hare in every respect, that some are obliged to search for the knob, or small bone on the fore leg or foot, to distinguish them. Rabbits, the wild are the best, either are good and tender; if old, there will be much yellowish fat about the kidneys, the claws long, wool rough, and mixed with grey hairs; if young, the reverse. As to their being fresh, judge by the scent; they soon perish, if trapped or shot, and left in pelt or undressed. Their taint is quicker than veal, and the most sickish in nature, and will not, like beef or veal, be purged by fire. The cultivation of rabbits would be profitable in America, if the best methods were pursued. They are a very prolific and profitable animal. They are easily cultivated if properly attended, but not otherwise. A rabbit's burrow, on which $3000 may have been expended, might be very profitable, but on the small scale they would be well near market towns, easier bred and more valuable. Butter. Tight, waxy, yellow butter is better than white or crumbly, which soon becomes rancid and frowy. Go into the centre of balls or rolls to prove and judge it. If in firkin, the middle is to be preferred, as the sides are frequently distasted by the wood of the firkin, although oak and used for years. New pine tubs are ruinous to the butter. To have sweet butter in dog days and through the vegetable seasons, send stone pots to honest, neat and trusty dairy people, and procure it packed down in May, and let them be brought in the night, or cool rainy morning, covered with a clean cloth wet in cold water, and partake of no heat from the horse, and set the pots in the coldest part of your cellar, or in the ice house. Some say that May butter thus preserved will go into the winter use, better than fall made butter. Cheese. The red, smooth, moist coated and tight pressed, square edged cheese, are better than white coat, hard rinded or bilged. The inside should be yellow and flavored to your taste. Old shelves which have only been wiped down for years, are preferable to scoured and washed shelves. Deceits are used by saltpetering the outside, or coloring with hemlock, cocumberries or saffron, infused into the milk. The taste of either supercedes every possible evasion. Eggs. Clear, thin shelled, longest oval and sharp edges are best. To ascertain whether new or stale, hold to the light. If the white is clear, the yolk regularly in the centre, they are good, but if otherwise they are stale. The best possible method of ascertaining is to put them into water. If they lie on their bilge, they are good and fresh. If they bob up on an end, they are stale, and if they rise, they are addled, proved, and of no use. End of Part 1 of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. Part 2 of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. We proceed to roots and vegetables, and the best cook cannot alter the first quality, they must be good, or the cook will be disappointed. Potatoes take rank for universal use, profit, and easy acquirement. The smooth skin, known by the name of house potato, is the most mealy and richest flavored. The yellow rusticoat next best. The red and the red rusticoat are tolerable, and the yellow Spanish have their value. Those cultivated from imported seed, on sandy or dry loamy lands, are best for table use, though the red or either will produce more in rich, loamy, highly manured garden grounds. New lands and a sandy soil afford the richest flavored. and most mealy potato much depends on the ground on which they grow, more on the species of potatoes planted, and still more from foreign seeds, and each may be known by attention to connoisseurs, for a good potato comes up in many branches of cookery, as hereinafter prescribed. All potatoes should be dug before the rainy seasons in the fall, well dried in the sun, kept from frost and dampness during the winter. In the spring removed from the cellar to a dry loft, and spread thin, and frequently stirred and dried, or they will grow and be thereby injured for cookery. A roast potato is brought on with roast beef, a steak, a chop, or fricassee. Good boiled with a boiled dish. Make an excellent stuffing for a turkey, water, or wild fowl. Make good pie, and a good starch for many uses. All potatoes run out, or depreciate in America. A fresh importation of the Spanish might restore them to table use. It would swell this treatise too much to say every thing that is useful to prepare a good table, but I may be pardoned by observing that the Irish have preserved a genuine mealy rich potato for a century, which takes rank of any known in any other kingdom, and I have heard that they renew their seed by planting and cultivating the seed ball which grows on the tine. The manner of their managing it to keep up the excellency of that root, would better suit a treatise on agriculture and gardening than this, and be inserted in a book which would be read by the farmer instead of his amiable daughter. If no one treats on the subject, it may appear in the next edition. Onions. The Madeira white is best in market, esteemed softer flavored, and not so fiery, but the high red, round, hard onions are the best. If you consult cheapness, the largest are best. If you consult taste and softness, the very smallest are the most delicate, and used at the first tables. Onions grow in the richest, highest cultivated ground, and better year after year, on the same ground. Beets grow on any ground, but best on loam, or light gravel grounds. The red is the richest and best approved, the white has a sickish sweetness which is disliked by many. Parsnips are a valuable root, cultivated best in rich old grounds and doubly deep plowed, late sown, they grow thrifty, and are not so prongy. They may be kept anywhere and any how, so that they do not grow with heat, or are nipped with frost. If frosted, let them thaw in earth. They are richer flavored when plowed out of the ground in April, having stood out during the winter, though they will not last long after, and commonly more sticky and hard in the centre. Carrots are managed as it respects plowing and rich ground, similarly to parsnips. The yellow are better than the orange or red. Middling sized, that is, a foot long and 2 inches thick at the top end, are better than overgrown ones. They are cultivated best with onions, sowed very thin and mixed with other seeds, while young or 6 weeks after sown, especially if with onions on true onion ground. They are good with veal cookery, rich in soups, excellent with hash, in May and June. Garlicks, though used by the French, are better adapted to the uses of medicine than cookery. Asparagus. The mode of cultivation belongs to gardening. Their business is only to cut and dress, the largest is best. The growth of a day sufficient, 6 inches long, and cut just above the ground. Many cut below the surface, under an idea of getting tender shoots, and preserving the bed, but it enfeebles the root. Dig round it, and it will be wet with the juices, but if cut above ground, and just as the dew is going off, the sun will either reduce the juice, or send it back to nourish the root. It's an excellent vegetable. Parsley, of the 3 kinds, the thickest and branchiest is the best, is sown among onions, or in a bed by itself, may be dried for winter use, though a method which I have experienced is much better. In September I dig my roots, procure an old thin stave dry cask, bore holes an inch diameter in every stave, 6 inches asunder round the cask, and up to the top. First take a half bushel of rich garden mould, and put into the cask, then run the roots through the staves, leaving the branches outside. Press the earth tight about the root within, and thus continue on through the respective stories, till the cask is full. It being filled, run an iron bar through the centre of the dirt in the cask, and fill with water. let stand on the south and east side of a building till frosty night, then remove it, by slinging a rope round the cask, into the cellar, where, during the winter, I clip with my scissors the fresh parsley, which my neighbours or myself have occasion for, and in the spring transplant the roots in the bed in the garden, or in any unused corner, or let stand upon the wharf or the wash shed. It's an useful mode of cultivation, and a pleasurably tasted herb, and much used in garnishing viands. Radish. Salmon colored is the best, purple next best, white, turnip. Each are procured from southern seeds annually. They grow thriftiest sown among onions. The turnip radish will last well through the winter. Artichokes. The Jerusalem is best, are cultivated like potatoes, though their stalks grow 7 feet high, and may be preserved like the turnip radish, or pickled, they like. Horse radish. Once in the garden can scarcely ever be totally eradicated. Plowing or digging them up with that view, seems at times rather to increase and spread them. Cucumbers are of many kinds. The prickly is best for pickles, but generally bitter. The white is difficult to raise and tender. Choose the bright green, smooth and proper sized. Melons. The water melons is cultivated on sandy soils only. Above latitude 41½ if a stratum of land be dug from a well, it will bring the first year good water melons. The red cored are highest flavored. A hard rind proves them ripe. Musk melons are various. The rough skinned are best to eat. The short round, fair skinned, is best for mangoes. Lettuce is of various kinds. The purple spotted leaf is generally the tenderest, and free from bitter. Your taste must guide your market. Cabbage requires a page, they are so multifarious. Note, all cabbages have a higher relish that grow on new unmatured grounds. If grown in an old town and on old gardens, they have a rankness, which at times may be perceived by a fresh air traveller. This observation has been experienced for years, that cabbages require new ground, more than turnips. The Low Dutch, only will do in old gardens. The Early Yorkshire must have rich soils. They will not answer for winter. They are easily cultivated, and frequently brought to market in the fall, but will not last the winter. The Green Savoy, with the richest crinkles, is fine and tender, and although they do not head like the Dutch or Yorkshire, yet the tenderness of the out leaves is a counterpoise. It will last through the winter and are high flavored. The Yellow Savoy takes next rank, but will not last so long. All cabbages will mix and participate of other species, like Indian corn. They are culled best in plants, and a true gardener will, in the plant describe those which will head, and which will not. This is new, but a fact. The gradations in the Savoy cabbage are discerned by the leaf. The richest and most scalloped and crinkled and thickest green Savoy falls little short of a cauliflower. The red and reddest small tight heads are best for slaw. It will not boil well, comes out black or blue, and tinges other things with which it is boiled. Beans. The clabbered bean is easiest cultivated and collected, are good for string beans, will shell, must be polled. The Windsor bean is an earlier good string or shell bean. Cranberry bean is rich but not universally approved equal to the other two. Frost bean is good only to shell. 6 weeks bean is a yellowish bean, and early brought forward and tolerable. Lazy bean is tough and needs no pole. English bean, what they denominate the horse bean, is mealy when young, is profitable, easily cultivated, and may be grown on worn out grounds. As they may be raised by boys, I cannot but recommend the most extensive cultivation of them. The small white bean is best for winter use, and excellent. Calivants are run out, a yellow small bush, a black speck or eye, are tough and tasteless, and little worth in cookery, and scarcely bear exportation. Peas, green peas. The Crown Imperial takes rank in point of flavor. They blossom purple and white on the top of the vines, will run from 3 to 5 feet high, should be set in light sandy soil only, or they run too much to vines. The crowned pea is second in richness of flavor. The Rondeval is large and bitterish. Early Carlton is produced first in the season. Good. Marrow fats, green, yellow, and is large, easily cultivated, not equal to others. Sugar pea, needs no bush, the pods are tender and good to eat, easily cultivated. Spanish Manratto is a rich pea, requires a strong high bush. All peas must be picked carefully from the vines as soon as dew is off, shelled and cleaned without water, and boiled immediately, they are thus the richest flavored. Herbs, useful in cookery. Thyme is good in soups and stuffings. Sweet marjoram is used in turkeys. Summer savory, ditto, and in sausages, and salted beef, and legs of pork. Sage is used in cheese and pork, but not generally approved. Parsley, good in soups, and to garnish roast beef, excellent with bread and butter in the spring. Pennyroyal is a high aromatic, although a spontaneous herb in old plowed fields, yet might be more generally cultivated in gardens, and used in cookery and medicines. Sweet thyme is most useful and best approved in cookery. Fruits. Pears. There are many different kinds, but the large bell pear, sometimes called the pound pear, the yellowest is the best, and in the same town they differ essentially. Hard winter pear, are innumerable in their qualities, are good in sauces and baked. Harvest and summer pear are a tolerable dessert, and are much improved in this country, as all other fruits are by grafting and inoculation. Apples are still more various, yet rigidly retain their own species, and are highly useful in families, and ought to be more universally cultivated, excepting in the compactest cities. There is not a single family but might set a tree in some otherwise useless spot, which might serve the twofold use of shade and fruit, on which 12 or 14 kinds of fruit trees might easily be engrafted, and essentially preserve the orchard from the intrusions of boys, etc., which is too common in America. If the boy who thus planted a tree, and guarded and protected it in a useless corner, and carefully engrafted different fruits, was to be indulged free access into orchards, whilst the neglectful boy was prohibited, how many millions of fruit trees would spring into growth, and what a saving to the Union! The net saving would in time extinguish the public debt, and enrich our cookery. Currants are easily grown from shoots trimmed off from old bunches, and set carelessly in the ground. They flourish on all soils, and make good jellies. Their cultivation ought to be encouraged. Black currants may be cultivated, but until they can be dried, and until sugars are propagated, they are in a degree unprofitable. Grapes are natural to the climate, grow spontaneously in every state in the Union, and 10 degrees north of the line of the Union. The Madeira, Lisbon, and Malaga grapes are cultivated in gardens in this country, and are a rich treat or dessert. Trifling attention only is necessary for their ample growth. End of Part II of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. Part III of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Having pointed out the best methods of judging of the qualities of viands, poultry, fish, vegetables, etc., we now present the best approved methods of dressing and cooking them, and to suit all tastes, present the following recipes. To roast beef. The general rules are, to have a brisk hot fire, to hang down rather than to spit, to baste with salt and water, and 1/4 of an hour to every pound of beef, though tender beef will require less, while old tough beef will require more roasting. Pricking with a fork will determine you whether done or not. Rare done is the healthiest and the taste of this age. Roast mutton. If a breast, let it be called; if a leg, stuffed or not. Let be done more gently than beef, and done more. The chine, saddle or leg require more fire and longer time than the breast, etc. Garnish with scraped horse radish, and serve with potatoes, beans, cauliflowers, watercresses or boiled onions, caper sauce, mashed turnip or lettuce. Roast veal. As it is more tender than beef or mutton, and easily scorched, paper it, especially the fat parts, lay at some distance from the fire a while to heat gently, baste it well, a 15 pound piece requires 1 hour and a quarter roasting, garnish with green parsley and sliced lemon. Roast Lamb. Lay down to a clear good fire that will not want stirring or altering, baste with butter, dust on flour, baste with the drippings, and before you take it up, add more butter and sprinkle on a little salt and parsley shred fine. Send to table with a nice salad, green peas, fresh beans or a cauliflower or asparagus. To stuff a turkey. Grate a whole loaf, 1/4 of a pound butter, 1/4 of a pound salt pork finely chopped, 2 eggs, a little sweet marjoram, summer savory, parsley and sage, pepper and salt, if the pork be not sufficient, fill the bird and sew up. The same will answer for all wild fowl. Water fowls require onions. The same ingredients stuff a leg of veal, fresh pork, or a loin of veal. To stuff and roast a turkey or fowl. 1 pound soft wheat bread, 3 ounces beef suet, 3 eggs, a little sweet thyme, sweet marjoram, pepper and salt, and some add a gill of wine. Fill the bird therewith and sew up, hang down to a steady solid fire, basting frequently with salt and water, and roast until a steam emits from the breast. Put 1/3 of a pound of butter into the gravy, dust flour over the bird, and baste with the gravy. Serve up with boiled onions and cranberry sauce, mangoes, pickles or celery. 2. Others omit the sweet herbs and add parsley done with potatoes. 3. Boil and mash 3 pints potatoes, wet them with butter, add sweet herbs, pepper, salt, fill and roast as above. To stuff and roast a goslin. Boil the innards tender, chop them fine, put double quantity of grated bread, 4 ounces butter, pepper, salt, and sweet herbs if you like. 2 eggs moulded into the stuffing, parboil 4 onions and chop them into the stuffing, add wine and roast the bird. The above is a good stuffing for every kind of water fowl, which requires onion sauce. To smother a fowl in oysters. Fill the bird with dry oysters and sew up, and boil in water just sufficient to cover the bird, salt and season to your taste. When done tender, put into a deep dish and pour over it a pint of stewed oysters, well buttered and peppered. Garnish a turkey with sprigs of parsley or leaves of celery. A fowl is best with a parsley sauce. To stuff a leg of veal. Take 1 pound of veal, 1/2 pound pork, salted, 1 pound grated bread, chop all very fine, with a handful of green parsley, pepper it, add 3 ounces butter and 3 eggs, and sweet herbs if you like them. Cut the leg round like a ham, and stab it full of holes, and fill in all the stuffing. Then salt and pepper the leg and dust on some flour. If baked in an oven, put into a sauce pan with a little water. If potted, lay some skewers at the bottom of the pot. Put in a little water and lay the leg on the skewers. With a gentle fire render it tender, frequently adding water. When done, take out the leg, put butter in the pot and brown the leg. The gravy in a separate vessel must be thickened and buttered, and a spoonful of catsup added. To stuff a leg of pork to bake or roast. Corn the leg 48 hours and stuff with sausage meat, and bake in a hot oven 2 hours and a half, or roast. To a la mode a round of beef. To a 14 or 16 pound round of beef, put 1 ounce saltpetre, 48 hours after stuff it with the following: 1 1/2 pound beef, 1 pound salt pork, 2 pound grated bread, chop all fine and rub in a 1/2 pound butter, salt, pepper and cayenne, summer savory, thyme. Lay it on skewers in a large pot, over 3 pints hot water, which it must occasionally be supplied with, the steam of which in 4 or 5 hours will render the round tender, if over a moderate fire. When tender, take away the gravy and thicken with flour and butter, and boil, brown the round with butter and flour, adding catsup and wine to your taste. To a la mode a round. Take fat pork cut in slices or mince, season it with pepper, salt, sweet marjoram and thyme, cloves, mace and nutmeg, make holes in the beef and stuff it the night before cooked. Put some bones across the bottom of the pot to keep from burning. Put in 1 quart claret wine, 1 quart water and 1 onion, lay the round on the bones, cover close and stop it round the top with dough, hang on in the morning, and stew gently 2 hours. Turn it, and stop tight, and stew 2 hours more. When done tender, grate a crust of bread on the top, and brown it before the fire. Scum the gravy and serve in a butter boat. Serve it with the residue of the gravy in the dish. To dress a Turtle. Fill a boiler or kettle with a quantity of water sufficient to scald the calipash and callipee, the fins, &c. and about 9 o'clock hang up your turtle by the hind fins. Cut off the head and save the blood. Take a sharp pointed knife and separate the calipash from the callipee, or the back from the belly part, down to the shoulders, so as to come at the entrails, which take out, and clean them, as you would those of any other animal, and throw them into a tub of clean water, taking great care not to break the gall, but to cut it off from the liver and throw it away. Then separate each distinctly, and put the guts into another vessel. Open them with a small pen knife, end to end, wash them clean, and draw them through a woolen cloth, in warm water, to clear away the slime, and then put them in clean cold water, till they are used with the other part of the entrails, which must be cut up small to be mixed in the baking dishes with the meat. This done, separate the back and belly pieces, carefully cutting away the fore fins by the upper joint which scald. Peel off the loose skin and cut them into small pieces, laying them by themselves, either in another vessel or on the table, ready to be seasoned. Then cut off the meat from the belly part, and clean the back from the lungs, kidneys, &c. and that meat cut into pieces as small as a walnut, laying it likewise by itself. After this you are to scald the back and belly pieces, pulling off the shell from the back, and the yellow skin from the belly, when all will be white and clean, and with the kitchen cleaver cut those up likewise into pieces about the bigness or breadth of a card. Put those pieces into clean cold water, wash them and place them in a heap on the table, so that each part may lay by itself. The meat being thus prepared and laid separate for seasoning, mix 2/3 parts of salt, or rather more, and 1/3 part of cayenne pepper, black pepper, and nutmeg and mace pounded fine and mixed all together. The quantity to be proportioned to the size of the turtle, so that in each dish there may be about 3 spoonfuls of seasoning to every 12 pound of meat. Your meat being thus seasoned, get some sweet herbs, such as thyme, savory, &c. let them be dried and rubbed fine, and having provided some deep dishes to bake it in, which should be of the common brown ware, put in the coarsest part of the meat, put a 1/4 pound of butter at the bottom of each dish, and then put some of each of the several parcels of meat, so that the dishes may be all alike and have equal portions of the different parts of the turtle, and between each laying of meat, strew a little of the mixture of sweet herbs, fill your dishes within 1 1/2 or 2 inches of the top. Boil the blood of the turtle and put into it, then lay on force meat balls made of veal, highly seasoned with the same seasoning as the turtle. Put in each dish a gill of Madeira wine, and as much water as it will conveniently hold. Then break over it 5 or 6 eggs to keep the meat from scorching at the top, and over that shake a handful of shred parsley, to make it look green. When done, put your dishes into an oven made hot enough to bake bread, and in 1 hour and half or 2 hours, according to the size of the dishes, it will be sufficiently done. To dress a calf's head, turtle fashion. The head and feet being well scalded and cleaned, open the head, taking the brains, wash, pick and cleanse, salt and pepper and parsley them, and put by in a cloth. Boil the head, feet and heartslet 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 hour, sever out the bones, cut the skin and meat in slices, drain the liquor in which boiled, and put by. Clean the pot very clean or it will burn too. Make a layer of the slices, which dust with a composition made of black pepper 1 spoon, of sweet herbs pulverized 2 spoons, sweet marjoram and thyme are most approved, a teaspoon of cayenne, 1 pound butter, then dust with flour, then a layer of slices, with slices of veal and seasoning till completed. Cover with the liquor, stew gently 3/4 of an hour. To make the forced meat balls, take 1 1/2 pound veal, 1 pound grated bread, 4 ounces raw salt pork, mince and season with above and work with 3 whites into balls, 1 or 1 1/2 inch diameter, roll in flour and fry in very hot butter till brown, then chop the brains fine and stir into the whole mess in the pot, put thereto 1/3 part of the fried balls and a pint wine or less, when all is heated through, take off and serve in tureens, laying the residue of the balls and hard boiled and peeled eggs into a dish, garnish with slices of lemon. A stew pie. Boil a shoulder of veal and cut up, salt, pepper and butter 1/2 pound, and slices of raw salt pork, make a layer of meat and a layer of biscuit, or biscuit dough into a pot, cover close, and stew half an hour in 3 quarts of water only. A sea pie. 4 pound of flour, 1 1/2 pound of butter rolled into paste, wet with cold water, line the pot therewith, lay in split pigeons, turkey pies, veal, mutton or birds, with slices of pork, salt, pepper and dust on flour, doing thus until your pot is full or your ingredients expended, add 3 pints water, cover tight with paste, and stew moderately 2 1/2 hours. A chicken pie. Pick and clean 6 chickens, without scalding, take out their inwards, and wash the birds while whole, then joint the birds, salt and pepper the pieces and inwards. Roll 1 inch thick paste, No. 8, and cover a deep dish, and double at the rim or edge of the dish, put thereto a layer of chickens and a layer of thin slices of butter, till the chickens and 1 1/2 pound butter are expended, which cover with a thick paste, bake 1 1/2 hour. Or if your oven be poor, parboil the chicken with 1/2 pound of butter, and put the pieces with the remaining 1 pound of butter and half the gravy into the paste, and while boiling, thicken the residue of the gravy, and when the pie is drawn, open the crust and add the gravy. Minced pies, a foot pie. Scald neat's feet, and clean well, grass fed are best, put them into a large vessel of cold water, which change daily during a week, then boil the feet till tender, and take away the bones, when cold, chop fine, to every 4 pound minced meat, add 1 pound of beef suet, and 4 pound apple raw, and a little salt, chop all together very fine, add 1 quart of wine, 2 pound of stoned raisins, 1 ounce of cinnamon, 1 ounce mace, and sweetened to your taste, make one of paste, No. 3, bake 3/4 of an hour. Weeks after, when you have occasion to use them, carefully raise the top crust, and with a round edged spoon, collect the meat into a bason, which warm with additional wine and spices to the taste of your circle, while the crust is also warmed like a hoe cake, put carefully together and serve up. By this means you can have hot pies through the winter, and enriched singly to your company. Tongue pie. 1 pound neat's tongue, 1 pound apple, 1/3 of a pound of sugar, 1/4 of a pound of butter, 1 pint of wine, 1 pound of raisins or currants, or half of each, 1/2 ounce of cinnamon and mace, bake in paste No. 1, in proportion to size. Minced pie of beef. 4 pound boiled beef chopped fine and salted, 6 pound of raw apple chopped also, 1 pound beef suet, 1 quart of wine or rich sweet cider, 1 ounce mace and cinnamon, a nutmeg, 2 pounds raisins, bake in paste No. 3, 3/4 of an hour. Observations. All meat pies require a hotter and brisker oven than fruit pies. In good cookeries, all raisins should be stoned. As people differ in their tastes, they may alter to their wishes, and as it is difficult to ascertain with precision the small articles of spicery, every one may relish as they like and suit their taste. Apple pie. Stew and strain the apples, to every 3 pints grate the peel of a fresh lemon, add cinnamon, mace, rose water and sugar to your taste, and bake in paste No. 3. Every species of fruit, such as peas, plums, raspberries, blackberries, may be only sweetened, without spices, and bake in paste No. 3. Currant pies. Take green, full grown currants, and 1/3 their quantity of sugar, proceeding as above. A buttered apple pie. Pare, quarter and core tart apples, lay in paste No. 3, cover with the same, bake half an hour, when drawn, gently raise the top crust, add sugar, butter, cinnamon, mace, wine or rose water. Part 3 of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. Part 4 of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. This recording is in the public domain. Puddings. A rice pudding. 1/4 of a pound rice, a stick of cinnamon, to a quart of milk, stirred often to keep from burning, and boil quick, cool, and add half a nutmeg, 4 spoons rose water, 8 eggs, butter or puff paste a dish, and pour the above composition into it, and bake 1 1/2 hour. No. 2. Boil 6 ounces rice in a quart milk, on a slow fire till tender, stir in 1 pound butter, interim beat 14 eggs, add to the pudding when cold, with sugar, salt, rose water and spices to your taste, adding raisins or currants, bake as No. 1. No. 3. 8 spoons rice boiled in a quart milk, when cooled add 8 eggs, 6 ounces butter, wine, sugar and spices, bake 2 hours. No. 4. Boil in water half pound ground rice till soft, add 2 quarts milk and scald, cool and add 8 eggs, 6 ounces butter, 1 pound raisins, salt, cinnamon, and a small nutmeg, bake 2 hours. No. 5. A cheap one. Half pint rice, 2 quarts milk, salt, butter, allspice, put cold into a hot oven, bake 2 1/2 hours. No. 6. Put 6 ounces rice into water, or milk and water, let swell or soak tender, then boil gently, stirring in a little butter, when cool stir in a quart cream, 6 or 8 eggs well beaten, and add cinnamon, nutmeg and sugar to your taste, bake. N.B. The mode of introducing the ingredients is a material point. In all cases where eggs are mentioned, it is understood to be well beat, whites and yolks and the spices fine and settled. A nice Indian Pudding. No. 1. 3 pints scalded milk, 7 spoons fine Indian meal, stir well together while hot, let stand till cooled, add 7 eggs, half pound raisins, 4 ounces butter, spice and sugar, bake 1 1/2 hour. No. 2. 3 pints scalded milk to 1 pint meal salted, cool, add 2 eggs, 4 ounces butter, sugar or molasses, and spice, it will require 2 1/2 hours baking. No. 3. Salt a pint meal, wet with 1 quart milk, sweeten and put into a strong cloth, brass or bell metal vessel, stone or earthen pot, secure from wet and boil 12 hours. A Sunderland Pudding. Whip 6 eggs, half the whites, take half a nutmeg, 1 pint cream and a little salt, 4 spoons fine flour, oil or butter pans, cups or bowls, bake in a quick oven 1 hour, eat with sweet sauce. A Wit Pot. Cut half a loaf of bread in dices, pour thereon 2 quarts milk, 6 eggs, rose water, nutmeg, and half pound of sugar, put into a dish and cover with paste No. 1, bake slow 1 hour. A Bread Pudding. 1 pound soft bread or biscuit soaked in 1 quart milk, run through a sieve or cullender, add 7 eggs, 3/4 of a pound sugar, 1/4 of a pound butter, nutmeg or cinnamon, 1 gill rose water, 1 pound stoned raisins, half pint cream, bake 3/4 of an hour, middling oven. A Flour Pudding. 7 eggs, 1/4 of a pound of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt, beat and put to 1 quart milk, 5 spoons of flour, cinnamon and nutmeg to your taste, bake half an hour, and serve up with sweet sauce. A Boiled Flour Pudding. 1 quart milk, 9 eggs, 7 spoons flour, a little salt, put into a strong cloth and boiled 3/4 of an hour. A cream almond pudding. Boil gently a little mace and half a nutmeg grated in a quart cream. When cool, beat 8 yolks and 3 whites, strain and mix with 1 spoon flour, 1/4 of a pound almonds, settled, add 1 spoon rose water, and by degrees the cold cream, and beat well together. Wet a thick cloth and flour it, and pour in the pudding, boil hard half an hour, take out, pour over it melted butter and sugar. An apple pudding dumplin. Put into paste quartered apples, lie in a cloth and boil 2 hours, serve with sweet sauce. Pears, plums, &c. are done the same way. Potato Pudding, baked. No. 1 pound boiled potatoes, 1 pound sugar, half a pound butter, 10 eggs. No. 2 1 pound boiled potatoes, mashed, 3/4 of a pound butter, 3 gills milk or cream, the juice of 1 lemon and the peel grated, half a pound sugar, half nutmeg, 7 eggs, taking out 3 whites, 2 spoons rose water. Apple Pudding. 1 pound apple sifted, 1 pound sugar, 9 eggs, 1/4 of a pound butter, 1 quart sweet cream, 1 gill rose water, a cinnamon, a green lemon peel grated, if sweet apples, add the juice of half a lemon, put on to paste No. 7, currants, raisins, and citron some add, but good without them. Carrot Pudding. A coffee cup full of boiled and strained carrots, 5 eggs, 2 ounces sugar and butter each, cinnamon and rose water to your taste, baked in a deep dish without paste. A Crookneck or winter squash pudding. Core, boil, and skin a good squash and bruise it well, take 6 large apples, pared, cored, and stewed tender, mix together, add 6 or 7 spoonsful of dry bread or biscuit, rendered fine as meal, half pint milk or cream, 2 spoons of rose water, 2 ditto wine, 5 or 6 eggs, beaten and strained, nutmeg, salt and sugar to your taste, 1 spoon flour, beat all smartly together, bake. The above is a good recipe for pumpkins, potatoes or yams, adding more moistening or milk and rose water, and to the 2 latter a few black or Lisbon currants, or dry whortleberries scattered in will make it better. Pumpkin. No. 1 quart stewed and strained, 3 pints cream, 9 beaten eggs, sugar, mace, nutmeg and ginger, laid into paste No. 7 or 3, and with a dough spur cross and checker it, and baked in dishes 3/4 of an hour. No. 2 1 quart of milk, 1 pint pumpkin, 4 eggs, molasses, allspice and ginger in a crust, bake 1 hour. Orange Pudding. Put 16 yolks with half a pound butter melted, grate in the rinds of 2 Seville oranges, beat in half pound of fine sugar, add 2 spoons orange water, 2 of rose water, 1 gill of wine, half pint cream, 2 Naples biscuit or the crumbs of a fine loaf, or roll soaked in cream, mix all together, put it into a rich puff paste, which let be double round the edges of the dish, bake like a custard. A Lemon Pudding. 1. Grate the yellow of the peels of 3 lemons, then take 2 whole lemons, roll under your hand on the table till soft, taking care not to burst them, cut and squeeze them into the grated peels. 2. Take 10 ounces soft wheat bread, and put a pint of scalded white wine thereto, let soak and put to No. 1. 3. Beat 4 whites and 8 yolks, and put to above, adding 3/4 of a pound of melted butter, which let be very fresh and good, 1 pound fine sugar, beat all together till thoroughly mixed. 4. Lay paste No. 7 or 9 on a dish, plate or saucers, and fill with above composition. 5. Bake near 1 hour, and when baked, stick on pieces of paste, cut with a jagging iron or a dough spur to your fancy, baked lightly on a floured paper. Garnished thus, they may be served hot or cold. Puff Pastes for Tarts. No. 1. Rub 1 pound of butter into 1 pound of flour, whip 2 whites and add with cold water and 1 yolk, make into paste, roll in 6 or 7 times 1 pound of butter, flouring it each roll. This is good for any small thing. No. 2. Rub 6 pound of butter into 14 pound of flour, 8 eggs, add cold water, make a stiff paste. No. 3. To any quantity of flour rub in 3/4 of its weight of butter, 12 eggs to a peck, rub in 1/3 or half, and roll in the rest. No. 4. Into 2 quarts flour salted and wet stiff with cold water roll in 9 or 10 times 1 1/2 pound of butter. No. 5. 1 pound flour, 3/4 of a pound of butter, beat well. No. 6. To 1 pound of flour rub in 1/4 of a pound of butter, wet with 3 eggs and rolled in a 1/2 pound of butter. A paste for sweetmeats. No. 7. Rub 1/3 of a pound of butter and 1 pound of lard into 2 pounds of flour, wet with 4 whites well beaten, water to make a paste, roll in the residue of shortening in 10 or 12 rollings, bake quick. No. 8. Rub in 1 1/2 pound of suet to 6 pounds of flour, and a spoonful of salt, wet with cream, roll in 6 or 8 times, 2 1/2 pounds of butter, good for a chicken or meat pie. Royal paste. No. 9. Rub 1/2 pound of butter into 1 pound of flour, 4 whites beat to a foam, add 2 yolks, 2 ounces of fine sugar, roll often, rubbing 1/3 and rolling 2/3 of the butter is best. Excellent for tarts and apple cakes. Custards. 1. 1 pint cream sweetened to your taste, warmed hot, stir in sweet wine till curdled, grate in cinnamon and nutmeg. 2. Sweeten a quart of milk, add nutmeg, wine, brandy, rose water and 6 eggs, bake in tea cups or dishes, or boil in water, taking care that it don't boil into the cups. 3. Put a stick of cinnamon to 1 quart of milk, boil well, add 6 eggs, 2 spoons of rose water, bake. 4. Boiled custard, 1 pint of cream, 2 ounces of almonds, 2 spoons of rose water or orange flower water, some mace, boil thick, then stir in sweetening, and lade off into china cups and serve up. Rice custard. Boil a little mace, a quartered nutmeg in a quart of cream, add rice, well boiled, while boiling sweeten and flavor with orange or rose water, putting into cups or dishes, when cooled set to serve up. A rich custard. 4 eggs beat and put in 1 quart cream, sweetened to your taste, half a nutmeg and a little cinnamon, baked. A sick bed custard. Scald a quart of milk, sweeten and salt a little, whip 3 eggs and stir in, bake on coals in a pewter vessel. Tarts. Apple tarts. Stew and strain the apples, add cinnamon, rose water, wine and sugar to your taste, lay in paste, royal, squeeze thereon orange juice, bake gently. Cranberries. Stewed, strained and sweetened, put into paste No. 9 and baked gently. Marmalade, laid into paste No. 1, baked gently. Apricots must be neither pared, cut or stoned, but put in whole, and sugar sifted over them, as above. Orange or lemon tart. Take 6 large lemons, rub them well in salt, put them into salt and water and let rest 2 days, change them daily in fresh water, 14 days, then cut slices and mince as fine as you can, and boil them 2 or 3 hours till tender, then take 6 pippins, pare, quarter and core them, boil in 1 pint fair water till the pippins break, then put the half of the pippins with all the liquor to the orange or lemon, and add 1 pound sugar, boil all together 1/4 of an hour, put into a gallipot and squeeze thereto a fresh orange, 1 spoon of which, with a spoon of the pulp of the pippin, laid into a thin royal paste, laid into small shallow pans or saucers, brushed with melted butter, and some superfine sugar sifted thereon, with a gentle baking will be very good. N.B. Pastry pans or saucers must be buttered lightly before the paste is laid on. If glass or china be used, have only a top crust, you can garnish with cut paste, like a lemon pudding, or serve on paste No. 7. Gooseberry Tart. Lay clean berries and sift over them sugar, then berries and sugar till a deep dish be filled, cover with paste No. 9, and bake somewhat more than other tarts. Grapes must be cut in two and stoned, and done like a gooseberry. Syllabubs. To make a fine syllabub from the cow. Sweeten a quart of cider with double refined sugar, grate nutmeg into it, then milk your cow into your liquor. When you have thus added what quantity of milk you think proper, pour half a pint or more, in proportion to the quantity of syllabub you make, of the sweetest cream you can get all over it. A whipped syllabub. Take 2 porringers of cream and 1 of white wine, grate in the skin of a lemon, take the whites of 3 eggs, sweeten it to your taste, then whip it with a whisk, take off the froth as it rises, and put it into your syllabub glasses or pots, and they are fit for use. To make a fine cream. Take a pint of cream, sweeten it to your palate, grate a little nutmeg, put in a spoonful of orange flower water and rose water, and 2 spoonfuls of wine, beat up 4 eggs and 2 whites, stir it all together one way over the fire till it is thick, have cups ready and pour it in. Lemon cream. Take the juice of 4 large lemons, half a pint of water, a pound of double refined sugar beaten fine, the whites of 7 eggs and the yolk of 1 beaten very well, mix all together, strain it, set it on a gentle fire, stirring it all the while, and skim it clean, put into it the peel of 1 lemon when it is very hot, but not to boil, take out the lemon peel and pour it into china dishes. Raspberry cream. Take a quart of thick sweet cream and boil it 2 or 3 wallops, then take it off the fire and strain some juices of raspberries into it to your taste, stir it a good while before you put your juice in, that it may be almost cold when you put it to it, and afterwards stir it one way for almost a quarter of an hour, then sweeten it to your taste, and when it is cold you may send it up. Whipped cream. Take a quart of cream, and the whites of 8 eggs beaten with half a pint of wine, mix it together and sweeten it to your taste with double refined sugar, you may perfume it, if you please, with musk or amber gum, tied in a rag and steeped a little in the cream, whip it up with a whisk and a bit of lemon peel tied in the middle of the whisk, take off the froth with a spoon and put into glasses. A trifle. Fill a dish with biscuit finely broken, rusk and spiced cake, wet with wine, then pour a good boiled custard, not too thick, over the rusk, and put a syllabub over that, garnish with jelly and flowers. End of Part 4. Part 5 of American Cookery by Amelia Simmons. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Cake. Plum cake. Mix 1 pound currants, 1 dram nutmeg, mace and cinnamon each, a little salt, 1 pound of citron, orange peel candied, and almonds bleached, 6 pound of flour, well dried, beat 21 eggs, and add with 1 quart new ale yeast, half pint of wine, 3 half pints of cream and raisins. Plain cake. 9 pound of flour, 3 pound of sugar, 3 pound of butter, 1 quart emptins, 1 quart milk, 9 eggs, 1 ounce of spice, 1 gill of rose water, 1 gill of wine. Another. 3/4 of a pound of sugar, 1 pound of butter, 6 eggs worked into 1 pound of flour. A rich cake. Rub 2 pound of butter into 5 pound of flour, add 15 eggs, not much beaten, 1 pint of emptins, 1 pint of wine, knead up stiff like biscuit, cover well and put by and let rise over night. To 2 1/2 pound raisins add 1 gill brandy to soak over night, or if new, half an hour in the morning, add them with 1 gill rose water and 2 1/2 pound of loaf sugar, 1 ounce cinnamon, work well and bake as loaf cake No. 1. Potato cake. Boil potatoes, peel and pound them, add yolks of eggs, wine, and melted butter, work with flour into paste, shape as you please, bake and pour over these melted butter, wine and sugar. Johnny Cake or Hoe Cake. Scald 1 pint of milk and put to 3 pints of Indian meal and half pint of flour, bake before the fire, or scald with milk 2/3 of the Indian meal, or wet 2/3 with boiling water, add salt, molasses and shortening, work up with cold water pretty stiff, and bake as above. Indian Slapjack. 1 quart of milk, 1 pint of Indian meal, 4 eggs, 4 spoons of flour, little salt, beat together, bake on griddles, or fry in a dry pan, or baked in a pan which has been rubbed with suet, lard or butter. Loaf Cakes. No. 1. Rub 6 pound of sugar, 2 pound of lard, 3 pound of butter into 12 pound of flour, add 18 eggs, 1 quart of milk, 2 ounces of cinnamon, 2 small nutmegs, a tea cup of coriander seed, each pounded fine and sifted, add 1 pint of brandy, half a pint of wine, 6 pound of stoned raisins, 1 pound of emptins. First having dried your flour in the oven, dry and roll the sugar fine, rub your shortening and sugar half an hour, it will render the cake much whiter and lighter. Heat the oven with dry wood for 1 1/2 hours, if large pans be used, it will then require 2 hours baking, and in proportion for smaller loaves. To frost it, whip 6 whites during the baking, add 3 pound of sifted loaf sugar, and put on thick as it comes hot from the oven. Some return the frosted loaf into the oven, it injures and yellows it. If the frosting be put on immediately, it does best without being returned into the oven. Another, No. 2. Rub 4 pound of sugar, 3 1/2 pound of shortening, half butter and half lard, into 9 pound of flour, 1 dozen of eggs, 2 ounces of cinnamon, 1 pint of milk, 3 spoonfuls coriander seed, 3 gills of brandy, 1 gill of wine, 3 gills of emptins, 4 pounds of raisins. Another, No. 3. 6 pound of flour, 3 of sugar, 2 1/2 pound of shortening, half butter, half lard, 6 eggs, 1 nutmeg, 1 ounce of cinnamon, and 1 ounce of coriander seed, 1 pint of emptins, 2 gills brandy, 1 pint of milk, and 3 pounds of raisins. Another, No. 4. 5 pound of flour, 2 pound of butter, 2 1/2 pounds of loaf sugar, 2 1/2 pounds of raisins, 15 eggs, 1 pint of wine, 1 pint of emptins, 1 ounce of cinnamon, 1 gill rose water, 1 gill of brandy, baked like No. 1. Another plain cake. No. 5. 2 quarts milk, 3 pound of sugar, 3 pound of shortening, warmed hot, add a quart of sweet cider, this curdle, add 18 eggs, allspice and orange to your taste, or fennel, caraway or coriander seeds, put to 9 pounds of flour, 3 pints emptins, and bake well. Cookies. 1 pound sugar boiled slowly in half pint water, scum well and cool, add 2 teaspoons pearl ash dissolved in milk, then 2 1/2 pounds flour, rub in 4 ounces butter and 2 large spoons of finely powdered coriander seed, wet with above. Make rolls half an inch thick, and cut to the shape you please. Bake 15 or 20 minutes in a slack oven, good 3 weeks. Another Christmas Cookie. To 3 pound flour, sprinkle a tea cup of fine powdered coriander seed, rub in 1 pound butter, and 1 1/2 pound sugar, dissolve 3 teaspoonfuls of pearl ash in a tea cup of milk, knead all together well, roll 3/4 of an inch thick, and cut or stamp into shape and size you please, bake slowly 15 or 20 minutes, though hard and dry at first, if put into an earthen pot and dry cellar or damp room, they will be finer, softer and better when 6 months old. Molasses Gingerbread. 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, some coriander or allspice, put to 4 teaspoons pearl ash, dissolved in half pint water, 4 pound flour, 1 quart molasses, 4 ounces butter, if in summer, rub in the butter, if in winter, warm the butter and molasses and pour it to the spiced flour. Knead well till stiff, the more the better, the lighter and whiter it will be. Bake brisk 15 minutes, don't scorch. Before it is put in, wash it with whites and sugar beat together. Gingerbread Cakes, or butter and sugar gingerbread. No. 1. 3 pounds of flour, a grated nutmeg, 2 ounces ginger, 1 pound sugar, 3 small spoons pearl ash dissolved in cream, 1 pound butter, 4 eggs, knead it stiff, shape it to your fancy, bake 15 minutes. Soft gingerbread to be baked in pans. No. 2. Rub 3 pounds of sugar, 2 pounds of butter into 4 pounds of flour, add 20 eggs, 4 ounces ginger, 4 spoons rose water, bake as No. 1. Butter drop. No. 3. Rub 1/4 of a pound butter, 1 pound sugar, sprinkled with mace, into 1 pound and a quarter flour, add 4 eggs, 1 glass rose water, bake as No. 1. Gingerbread. No. 4. 3 pound sugar, half pound butter, 1/4 of a pound of ginger, 1 dozen eggs, 1 glass rose water, rub into 3 pounds flour, bake as No. 1. A cheap seed cake. Rub 1 pound sugar, half an ounce allspice into 4 quarts flour, into which pour 1 pound butter melted in 1 pint milk, 9 eggs, 1 gill emptins, caraway seed and currants or raisins if you please. Make into 2 loaves, bake 1 1/2 hour. Queen's Cake. Whip half pound butter to a cream, add 1 pound sugar, 10 eggs, 1 glass wine, half gill rose water, and spices to your taste, all worked into 1 1/4 pound flour, put into pans, cover with paper, and bake in a quick well heat oven 12 or 16 minutes. Pound Cake. 1 pound sugar, 1 pound butter, 1 pound flour, 1 pound or 10 eggs, rose water 1 gill, spices to your taste, watch it well, it will bake in a slow oven in 15 minutes. Another called Pound Cake. Work 3/4 of a pound butter, 1 pound of good sugar, till very white, whip 10 whites to a foam, add the yolks and beat together, add 1 spoon rose water, 2 of brandy, and put the whole to 1 1/4 of a pound flour, if yet too soft, add flour and bake slowly. Soft Cakes in little pans. 1 1/2 pound sugar, half pound butter, rubbed into 2 pounds flour, add 1 glass wine, 1 ditto rose water, 18 eggs and a nutmeg. A light cake to bake in small cups. Half a pound sugar, half a pound butter, rubbed into 2 pounds flour, 1 glass wine, 1 ditto rose water, 2 ditto emptins, a nutmeg, cinnamon and currants. Shrewsbury Cake. 1 pound butter, 3/4 of a pound sugar, a little mace, 4 eggs mixed and beat with your hand till very light, put the composition to 1 pound flour, roll into small cakes, bake with a light oven. N.B. In all cases where spices are named, it is supposed that they be pounded fine and sifted. Sugar must be dried and rolled fine. Flour dried in an oven. Eggs well beat or whipped into a raging foam. Diet Bread. 1 pound sugar, 9 eggs, beat for an hour. Add to 14 ounces flour, spoonful rose water, 1 ditto cinnamon or coriander, bake quick. Rusk to make. No. 1. Rub in half pound sugar, half pound butter, to 4 pound flour, add pint milk, pint emptins, when risen well, bake in pans 10 minutes fast. No. 2. 1 pound sugar, 1 pound butter, 6 eggs, rubbed into 5 pounds flour, 1 quart emptins and wet with milk sufficient to bake as above. No. 3. 1 pound sugar, 1 pound butter, rubbed into 6 or 8 pounds of flour, 12 eggs, 1 pint emptins, wet soft with milk and bake. No. 4. P.C. rusk. Put 15 eggs to 4 pounds flour and make into large biscuit, and bake double or one top of another. No. 5. 1 pint milk, 1 pint emptins, to be laid over night in sponge. In morning melt 3/4 of a pound butter, 1 pound sugar in another pint of milk, add lukewarm, and beat till it rise well. No. 6. 3/4 of a pound butter, 1 pound sugar, 12 eggs, 1 quart milk, put as much flour as they will wet, a spoon of cinnamon, gill emptins, let it stand till very puffy or light, roll into small cakes, and let it stand on oiled tins while the oven is heating, bake 15 minutes in a quick oven, then wash the top with sugar and whites while hot. Biscuit. 1 pound flour, 1 ounce butter, 1 egg, wet with milk and break while oven is heating, and in the same proportion. Butter Biscuit. 1 pint each, milk and emptins, laid into flour, in sponge, next morning add 1 pound butter melted, not hot, and knead into it as much flour as will, with another pint of warmed milk, be of a sufficient consistence to make soft, some melt the butter in the milk. A butter drop. 4 yolks, 2 whites, 1 pound flour, 1/4 of a pound butter, 1 pound sugar, 2 spoons rose water, a little mace, baked in tin pans. End of Part 5 of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. Part 6 of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Preserves. For preserving quinces. Take a peck of quinces, pare them, take out the core with a sharp knife if you wish to have them whole. Boil parings and cores with 2 pound frost grapes, in 3 quarts water. Boil the liquor an hour and half, or till it is thick. Strain it through a coarse hair sieve, add 1 1/4 pound sugar to every pound of quince. Put the sugar into the syrup, scald and skim it till it is clear. Put the quinces into the syrup, cut up 2 oranges and mix with quince. Hang them over a gentle fire for 5 hours, then put them in a stone pot for use. Set them in a dry cool place. For preserving quinces in loaf sugar. Take a peck of quinces, put them into a kettle of cold water, hang them over the fire, boil them till they are soft, then take them out with a fork, when cold, pare them, quarter or halve them if you like. Take their weight of loaf sugar, put into a bell metal kettle or sauce pan with 1 quart of water, scald and skim it till it is very clear, then put in your quinces, let them boil in the syrup for half an hour, add oranges as before if you like, then put them in stone pots for use. For preserving strawberries. Take 2 quarts of strawberries, squeeze them through a cloth, add half a pint of water and 2 pound of sugar, put it into a sauce pan, scald and skim it, take 2 pound of strawberries with stems on, set your sauce pan on a chafing dish, put as many strawberries into the dish as you can with the stems up without bruising them, let them boil for about 10 minutes, then take them out gently with a fork, and put them into a stone pot for use. When you have done the whole, turn the syrup into the pot when hot, set them in a cool place for use. Currants and cherries may be done in the same way, by adding a little more sugar. The American Citron. Take the rind of a large watermelon, not too ripe, cut it into small pieces, take 2 pound of loaf sugar, 1 pint of water, put it all into a kettle, let it boil gently for 4 hours, then put it into pots for use. To keep white bullace, pears, plums, or damsons, &c. for tarts or pies. Gather them when full grown, and just as they begin to turn, pick all the largest out, save about 2/3 of the fruit, To the other third, put as much water as you think will cover them, boil and skim them. When the fruit is boiled very soft, strain it through a coarse hair sieve, and to every quart of this liquor put a pound and a half of sugar, boil it and skim it very well, then throw in your fruit, just give them a scald. Take them off the fire, and when cold, put them into bottles with wide mouths, pour your syrup over them, lay a piece of white paper over them and cover them with oil. To make Marmalade. To 2 pounds of quinces, put 3/4 of a pound of sugar and a pint of spring water, then put them over the fire and boil them till they are tender, then take them up and bruize them, then put them into the liquor, let it boil 3/4 of an hour, and then put it into your pots or saucers. To preserve Mulberries whole. Set some mulberries over the fire in skillet or preserving pan, draw from them a pint of juice when it is strained, then take 3 pounds of sugar beaten very fine, wet the sugar with the pint of juice, boil up your sugar and skim it, put in 2 pounds of ripe mulberries, and let them stand in the syrup, till they are thoroughly warm, then set them on the fire, and let them boil very gently. Do them but half enough, so put them by in the syrup till next day, then boil them gently again. When the syrup is pretty thick, and will stand in round drops when it is cold, they are done enough, so put all into a gallipot for use. To preserve Gooseberries, Damsons or Plums. Gather them when dry, full grown and not ripe, pick them one by one, put them into glass bottles that are very clean and dry, and cork them close with new corks, then put a kettle of water on the fire, and put in the bottles with care, wet not the corks, but let the water come up to the necks, make a gentle fire till they are a little curdled and turn white, do not take them up till cold, then pitch the corks all over, or wax them close and thick, then set them in a cool dry cellar. To preserve Peaches. Put your peaches in boiling water, just give them a scald, but don't let them boil, take them out and put them in cold water, then dry them in a sieve, and put them in long wide mouthed bottles. To half a dozen peaches, take a 1/4 pound of sugar, clarify it, pour it over your peaches, and fill the bottles with brandy, stop them close, and keep them in a close place. To preserve Apricots. Take your apricots and pare them, then stone what you can whole, give them a light boiling in a pint of water, or according to your quantity of fruit, then take the weight of your apricots in sugar, and take the liquor which you boil them in, and your sugar, and boil it till it comes to a syrup, and give them a light boiling, taking of the scum as it rises, when the syrup jellies it is enough, then take up the apricots and cover them with the jelly, and put cut paper over them, and lay them down when cold. Or, take you plums before they have stones in them, which you may know by putting a pin through them, then coddle them in many waters, till they are as green as grass, peel them and coddle them again, you must take the weight of them in sugar and make a syrup, put in your sugar a pint of water, then put them in, set them on the fire to boil slowly, till they be clear, skimming them often, and they will be very green, put them up in glasses and keep them for use. To preserve Cherries. Take 2 pounds of cherries, 1 pound and a half of sugar, half a pint of fair water, melt some sugar in it. When it is melted, put in your other sugar and your cherries, then boil them softly, till all the sugar be melted, then boil them fast and skim them, take them off 2 or 3 times and shake them, and put them on again, and let them boil fast, and when they are of a good colour and the syrup will stand, they are boiled enough. To preserve Raspberries. Choose raspberries that are not too ripe, and take the weight of them in sugar, wet your sugar with a little water, and put in your berries, and let them boil softly, take heed of breaking them. When they are clear, take them up, and boil the syrup till it be thick enough, then put them in again, and when they are cold, put them up in glasses. To preserve Currants. Take the weight of the currants in sugar, pick out the seeds, take to a pound of sugar, half a pint of water, let it melt, then put in your currants, and let them do very leisurely, skim them and take them up, let the syrup boil, then put them on again, and when they are clear and the sirrup thick enough, take them off, and when they are cold, put them up in glasses. To preserve Plums. Take your plums before they have stones in them, which you may know by putting a pin through them, then coddle them in many waters till they are as green as grass, peel them and coddle them again, you must take the weight of them in sugar, a pint of water, then put them in, set them on the fire to boil slowly till they be clear, skimming them often, and they will be very green, put them up in glasses and keep them for use. To keep Damsons. Take damsons when they are first ripe, pick them off carefully, wipe them clean, put them into snuff bottles, stop them up tight so that no air can get to them, nor water. Put nothing into the bottles but plums. Put the bottles into cold water, hang them over the fire, let them heat slowly, let the water boil slowly for half an hour. When the water is cold take out the bottles, set the bottles into a cold place, they will keep 12 months if the bottles are stopped tight, so as no air nor water can get to them. They will not keep long after the bottles are opened, the plums must be hard. Currant Jelly. Having stripped the currants from the stalks, put them in a stone jar, stop it close, set it in a kettle of boiling water half way the jar, let it boil half an hour, take it out and strain the juice through a coarse hair sieve, to a pint of juice put a pound of sugar, set it over a fine quick fire in a preserving pan, or a bell metal skillet, keep stirring it all the time till the sugar be melted, then skim the scum off as fast as it rises. When the jelly is very clear and fine, pour it into earthen or china cups. When cold, cut white papers just the bigness of the top of the pot, and lay on the jelly. Dip those papers in brandy, then cover the top of the pot and prick it full of holes. Set it in a dry place. You may put some into glasses for present use. To dry Peaches. Take the fairest and ripest peaches, pare them into fair water. Take their weight in double refined sugar, of 1/2 makes a very thin syrup. Then put in your peaches, boiling them till they look clear, then split and stone them, boil them till they are very tender, lay them a draining, take the other half of the sugar and boil it almost to a candy, then put in your peaches and let them lie all night, then lay them on a glass, and set them in a stove till they are dry. If they are sugared too much, wipe them with a wet cloth a little. Let the first syrup be very thin, a quart of water to a pound of sugar. To pickle or make mangoes of melons. Take green melons, as many as you please, and make a brine strong enough to bear an egg, then pour it boiling hot on the melons, keeping them down under the brine. Let them stand 5 or 6 days, then take them out, split them down on one side, take out all the seeds, scrape them well in the inside, and wash them clean with cold water, then take a clove of a garlic, a little ginger and nutmeg sliced, and a little whole pepper, put all these proportionably into the melons, filling them up with mustard seeds, then lay them in an earthen pot with a slit upwards, and take 1 part of mustard and 2 parts of vinegar, enough to cover them, pouring it upon them scalding hot, and keep them close stopped. To pickle Barberries. Take of white wine vinegar and water, of each an equal quantity. To every quart of this liquor, put in half a pound of cheap sugar, then pick the worst of your barberries and put into this liquor, and the best into glasses. Then boil your pickle with the worst of your barberries, and skim it very clean. Boil it till it looks of a fine color, then let it stand to be cold, before you strain it. Then strain it through a cloth, wringing it to get all the color you can from the barberries. Let it stand to cool and settle, then pour it clear into the glasses. In a little of the pickle boil a little fennel, when cold put a little bit at the top of the pot or glass, and cover it close with a bladder or leather. To every half pound of sugar put 1/4 of a pound of white salt. To pickle Cucumbers. Let your cucumbers be small, fresh gathered, and free from spots, then make a pickle of salt and water, strong enough to bear an egg. Boil the pickle and skim it well, and then pour it upon your cucumbers and stive them down for 24 hours, then strain them out into a cullender and dry them well with a cloth, and take the best white wine vinegar, with cloves, diced mace, nutmeg, white peppercorns, long pepper, and races of ginger, as much as you please. boil them up together, and then clap the cucumbers in with a few vine leaves, and a little salt, and as soon as they begin to turn their color, put them into jars, stive them down close, and when cold tie on a bladder and leather. A la mode Beef. Take a round of beef and stuff it with half pound pork, half pound of butter, the soft of half a loaf of wheat bread, boil 4 eggs very hard, chop them up, add sweet marjoram, sage, parsley, summer savory, and 1 ounce of cloves pounded, chop them all together with 2 eggs very fine, and add a gill of wine, season very high with salt and pepper, cut holes in your beef to put your stuffing in, then stick whole cloves into the beef, then put it into a 2 pail pot, with sticks at the bottom. If you wish to have the beef round when done, put it into a cloth and bind it tight with 20 or 30 yards of twine, put it into your pot with 2 or 3 quarts of water, and 1 gill of wine. If the round be large, it will take 3 or 4 hours to bake it. For dressing Codfish. Put the fish first into cold water and wash it, then hang it over the fire and soak it 6 hours in scalding water, then shift it into clean warm water, and let it scald for 1 hour. It will be much better than to boil. To boil all kinds of garden stuff. In dressing all sorts of kitchen garden herbs, take care they are clean washed, that there be no small snails or caterpillars between the leaves, and that all coarse outer leaves, and the tops that have received any injury by the weather, be taken off. Next wash them in a good deal of water, and put them into a cullender to drain. Care must likewise be taken, that your pot or saucepan be clean, well tinned, and free from sand or grease. To keep green peas till Christmas. Take young peas, shell them, put them into a cullender to drain, then by a cloth 4 or 5 times double on a table, then spread them on, dry them very well, and have your bottles ready, fill them, cover them with mutton suet fat when it is a little soft, fill the necks almost to the top, cork them, tie a bladder and a leather over them, and set them in a dry cool place. To boil French Beans. Take your beans and string them, cut in 2 and then across, when you have done them all, sprinkle them over with salt, stir them together, as soon as your water boils put them in and make them boil up quick, they will be soon done, and they will look of a better green than when growing in the garden. If they are very young, only break off the ends, then break in 2 and dress them in the same manner. To boil Broad Beans. Beans require a great deal of water, and it is not best to shell them till just before they are ready to go into the pot. When the water boils, put them in with some picked parsley and some salt, make them boil up quick, when you see them begin to fall, they are done enough, strain them off, garnish the dish with boiled parsley, and send plain butter in a cup or boat. To boil Green Peas. When your peas are shelled and the water boils, which should not be much more than will cover them, put them in with a few leaves of mint. As soon as they boil, put in a piece of butter as big as a walnut, and stir them about. When they are done enough, strain them off, and sprinkle in a little salt, shake them till the water drains off, and send them hot to the table with melted butter in a cup or boat. To boil Asparagus. First, cut the white ends off about 6 inches from the head, and scrape them from the green part downward very clean. As you scrape them, throw them into a pan of clear water, and after a little soaking, tie them up in a small even bundle. When your water boils, put them in, and boil them up quick, but by over boiling they will lose their heads. Cut a slice of bread for a toast, and toast it brown on both sides. When your asparagus is done, take it up carefully, dip the toast in the asparagus water, and lay it at the bottom of your dish, then lay the heads of the asparagus on it, with the white ends outwards. Pour a little melted butter over the heads, cut an orange into small pieces, and stick them between for garnish. To boil Cabbage. If your cabbage is large, cut it into quarters, if small, cut it in halves. Let your water boil, then put in a little salt, and next your cabbage with a little more salt upon it. Make your water boil as soon as possible, and when the stalk is tender, take up your cabbage into a cullender or sieve, that the water may drain off, and send it to table as hot as you can. Savoys are dressed in the same manner. For brewing Spruce Beer. Take 4 ounces of hops, let them boil half an hour in 1 gallon of water, strain the hop water, then add 16 gallons of warm water, 2 gallons of molasses, 8 ounces of essence of spruce, dissolved in 1 quart of water, put it in a clean cask, then shake it well together, add half a pint of emptins, then let it stand and work 1 week. If very warm weather, less time will do. When it is drawn off to bottle, add 1 spoonful of molasses to every bottle. Emptins. Take a handful of hops and about 3 quarts of water, let it boil about 15 minutes, then make a thickening as you do for starch, strain the liquor, when cold put a little emptins to work them, they will keep well corked in a bottle 5 or 6 weeks. Advertisement. The author of the American Cookery not having an education sufficient to prepare the work for the press, the person that was employed by her, and entrusted with the recipes to prepare them for publication, with a design to impose on her and injure the sale of the book, did omit several articles very essential in some of the recipes, and placed others in their stead, which were highly injurious to them, without her consent, which was unknown to her till after publication, but she has removed them as far as possible by the following. Errata. Page 25, Rice Pudding, No. 2. For 1 pound butter, read half pound. For 14 eggs, read 8. No. 5. After half pint rice, add 6 ounces sugar. Page 26. A nice Indian Pudding, No. 3. Boil only 6 hours. A flour pudding, read 9 spoons of flour, put in scalding milk, bake an hour and half. A boiled flour pudding, 9 spoons of flour, boil an hour and half. Page 27. A cream almond pudding. For 8 yolks and 3 whites, read 8 eggs. For 1 spoon flour, read 8. Boil an hour and half. Potato pudding, No. 1, No. 2. Add a pint of flour to each. Page 29. Puff pastes for tarts, No. 3. For 12 eggs, read 6. Page 33. Plain cake. For 1 quart of emptins, read 1 pint. Page 35. Another plain cake, No. 5. For 9 pounds of flour, read 18 pounds. In all puddings where cream is mentioned, milk may be used. In pastes, the white of eggs only are to be used. End of Part 6. End of American Cookery, by Amelia Simmons. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, July 2010.